Once upon a time, long before tax forms and government agencies, the concept of income tax didn't exist. Wealth flowed freely through the hands of merchants, kings, and warriors, untouched by official collectors. But as civilizations grew, so did their needs, and a new system of contribution quietly began to take shape. The story of income tax begins in ancient Egypt, where pharaohs demanded a share of every harvest. Farmers would carry their grain to granaries, watched by stern officials with reed pens and clay tablets. It wasn't called income tax yet, but it was the first glimpse of wealth being measured and shared. Thousands of miles away in Mesopotamia, temple priests developed a similar system. Every transaction, from sheep sales to silver trades, was carefully noted. In their eyes, taxes weren't just payments. They were offerings to the gods who protected their cities. The idea of economic duty was born from divine devotion. By the time of the Roman Empire, taxation had become a fine art. Augustus Caesar introduced a census-based income tax, ensuring every citizen contributed according to their means. Yet, this system also bred corruption and resentment, the first whispers of rebellion against fiscal control. As the empire expanded, so did its appetite for revenue. Soldiers needed pay, roads needed repair, and wars demanded gold. The burden often fell hardest on the poor, while the elite found clever ways to evade their dues. Even then, the idea of tax avoidance was nothing new. When Rome fell, chaos took its place. In medieval Europe, taxes transformed into tributes and tithes, demanded by kings and churches alike. Peasants paid in crops, labor, or livestock. It was no longer a civic duty, but a symbol of servitude, a reminder of one's place in a rigid hierarchy. In 1215, the Magna Carta changed everything. English barons forced King John to recognize limits on his power to tax. It was the birth of accountability, the idea that rulers must justify every penny they demanded. From this seed, modern taxation would one day bloom. For centuries after, taxes remained tied to land and trade, not income. Farmers paid for their fields, merchants for their ships. But as the Industrial Revolution dawned, a new kind of wealth emerged, not in soil or silver, but in salaries, and governments began to take notice. In 1799, Britain faced an existential crisis, Napoleon. War demanded money, and Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger introduced the world's first modern income tax. It was temporary, he claimed, a patriotic duty to fund defense. Yet, like many temporary taxes, it never truly disappeared. The United States, too, would face its own reckoning. During the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln introduced America's first federal income tax to fund the Union Army. It was an act of necessity, not greed, a shared sacrifice to preserve the nation. After the war, the tax was repealed. Americans celebrated their financial freedoms, briefly. But as the country grew wealthier and industrial tycoons rose, inequality widened. The call for a fairer system echoed through Congress halls once more. The idea of taxing income made its inevitable return. In 1913, the 16th Amendment was ratified, giving Congress the power to collect income taxes permanently. It was hailed as a triumph of democracy. The wealthy would now bear their fair share. The modern era of taxation had begun, forever reshaping the relationship between citizens and the state. At first, only the richest Americans paid income tax. But world wars changed everything again. Governments needed immense funding for global conflict, and soon, nearly every working citizen was contributing. Taxes became not just a civic duty, but a patriotic necessity. By the mid-20th century, the tax system had become complex, layered with deductions, credits, and loopholes. For some, it represented fairness. For others, frustration. Yet through it all, income tax remained the backbone of modern government, the unseen engine powering public life. Today, as we file our returns online, it's easy to forget that income tax began as an act of survival, a tool forged in war, refined in peace, and bound to the rise of nations. Its origins whisper through every dollar deducted, echoing centuries of human struggle and adaptation. Income tax is not merely a transaction between citizens and state, It's a story of trust, responsibility, and the price of civilization itself. Behind every percentage lies the same old question humanity has asked for millennia. How much should we give to keep our world standing? From pharaohs to presidents, empires to democracies, the evolution of taxation tells the tale of human progress. How we learn to share the burdens of our collective journey. It is a mirror reflecting who we are, builders of systems, dreamers of fairness, seekers of balance. And so, when you next see that small deduction on your paycheck, remember, it carries the weight of history, a forgotten legacy that began in dusty temples, crossed marble empires, and shaped the destiny of nations. The story of income tax is, in truth, the story of civilization itself.